Live. I'm here with my old friend, Dave Lyons from Devil's Den. How are you doing, Dave?
I'm very fine. Lines is in sign on the dotted.
Do I pronounce it lion?
It sounded like you added an I or Y-O, lions, or like.
Because I actually thought your name was Lion.
It's amazing. Years and years, perfect example. You're not the only one. No, Lion. Because it's the very much less familiar version of that kind of thing. So, yeah. Lion.
And you're of Anglo-Saxon descent, so how does that work?
We don't need to go there. I am half on my dad's side of the Irish, Scottish, British thing. My mom's side is the Mediterranean and pretty much the rest of the world. So yeah.
You guys could have a nice battle. We got the Napoleon guy here, and then you.
I'm grateful. I have some like Mediterranean blood, for which I'm very grateful, especially to offset, if anything, to offset the British side.
And you won't burn, because I got two colors, like bright white and bright pink, and there's no tanning with me. It's burning or nothing.
Right. Maybe you have the vampire gene there.
Yeah, and I don't like garlic. So Michael, what did you think of your first taste of Devil's Den?
I thought that he has interesting chord progressions.
Cool.
Something I focus on because I also dabble in music writing.
Did you only listen to the first album? I know Dave it's more of a fan of that. I mean, I think that was the one. I remember you wrote a gushing thing, man. Like really, like you were one of the. I mean, it's never kind of hit the point of escape velocity, but you were one of the few people that actually got it. Like you wrote something that really, for the first
on
album,
Facebook
really
or what?
I can't remember what it was. I'd have to look it up. It might be on like what's it on the I can't remember MySpace. It might be on MySpace.
No, I've never been on MySpace. Never been on MySpace.
No, I don't think.
But
so.
no, with me, like when I like something, I mean, I can't fake it. Like, I mean, I really did like it, and I've met a lot of musicians in Montreal, and like your music is my favorite, and I piss a lot of my Montreal friends off when I say that because they make music too. Like Gandar, I don't want to start talking about other people.
More of you would be lovely. But yeah, anyhow, so what my point is that the first album was really, to me, is like the White Album. Like I was coming off of like 10 years of how it is with the first album. You have like oftentimes years of ideas just sort of culminating. But then the second album was the sophomore thing, whatever, was decidedly more prog. But even the like real prog heads would find it not prog enough, sort of. It's more. I've always wanted to keep things one foot in the psych world and the other foot in the prog world.
Well, one thing that I'll let Michael speak for himself, but one thing that he said is it seemed a little bit like a collection of songs without a sort of an album-wide prog.
The first
unity,
album,
the first album,
yeah. Like I say, it's like putting out the White Album for your first record. It's like it's not very cohesive in terms of style. I understand that. They're like, it is literally a collection of songs, but those like I wrote a lot of songs, and those were the songs at the time I felt were the strongest songs. And I believe the problem with me, man, is that I am not I like too many things too much, I have a hard time pinning down a particular passion. Sorry for the alliteration. But and it's ironic. See, I'm jumping ahead here, or not, but just in case you didn't realize, the name of the band, A Devil's Den, happens to be an anagram of my name, David Lyons. That's the secret behind
okay,
the man behind the curtain.
Really,
it's that concept. It's my band. It's like I have been for many years a session musician. Like years ago, I had my own band, and that was the only thing I did. We worked for about 8 years, and then it died. And
what was that band called? Because we made a drum. I think we painted your drum, right? The psychedelic drum. Remember?
Yes.
What was that band called?
Yeah, I might actually have one of those kicking around. And after that, anyhow, I became like a session guy or a hired gun for many, many, many years. And I got fed up with that and decided, okay, fuck it. I'm going to make my own band and just play the songs that I wrote. The problem is I've never been an instant frontman kind of guy. I've always been like like a more of a Robert Fripp kind of character. I would be much more comfortable sitting down with a bunch of gear and my guitar and, whatever. I'm a keyboard guy, but I multi as well, guitar, and all that shit, as opposed to trying to be like, Jimmy Page or Robert Plant or something. My music has always been more about, it's not been about the rock and roll experience. It's been about music, it's been about like just, in my opinion, the highest quality of like song that I could come up with. It, usually it's like melodic and it's got to have some kind of level of interest. Otherwise, it's just gonna, sound like fucking mush or whatever. But, but it, the prog part. Oftentimes, people hear something that I don't relate to as prog at all, but they hear it as prog only because, as you mentioned, it has chords. A lot of modern music really, it doesn't have much harmonic music, as they say, or movement. It's like just kind of bam, bam, bam. It's more of a dance thing, which can be cool, but
you don't stand a chance if you don't know how to dance, right?
Well, there's that. That was literally my fucking response to that whole thing. Anyhow, I should give you guys a room to talk here.
No. But Michael, what Michael said, I don't speak for him again, but I will. He said that after he stopped listening to your music, it kept playing in his head, especially the bass lines.
Nice.
It was like addictive, and I think that's what they call an earworm.
Nice. Well, I'm one of those cats that, take from everyone and try to learn from any bit of nugget of wisdom. And here's one that I hold true to my heart. Steve Miller said every good song should have 5 hooks. 5, which means like any little given part, woo, woo, like any little thing could be a hook, something that you remember again, spontaneously. So I try to keep that in mind, it'll make things interesting,
Yeah,
because I get bored easily. So I'm kind of writing shit for myself,
Yeah. Well, I was saying to the guys when we listened to it last night on air, that every song, as soon as it starts, like exactly what song it is. It's got a unique riff or catchy thing or a sound or instrument or whatever. They were all unique songs, and that's not always the case. Like Captain Beyond, we just listened to Captain Beyond. To me, it's just like straight up rock, and it's just like I'm bored pretty much every song. But with yours, I like all of them, some more than others, but they're unique. And when you're in that song, you know exactly where you are. You know what I mean? It's got its own color, it's got its own atmosphere, it's got its own flavor, and it's got parts that move and change, but you always feel like you're in the same song. So, but what did you have to say, Michael?
Well, I wanted to point something out. Dave Lyons here says that he's a bored composer. It's my favorite way to describe myself.
Okay.
Which is irritable to other people. Like I write 2 minutes of music and I'm bored with it. Next 2 minutes has to be completely different from the previous 2 minutes.
Uh-huh.
Do you feel that there's a lot of this is a dividing line between a lot of composers? That some composers, they can write a 20-minute song based on what you would think is 2 minutes worth of music.
I'm in that boat. Yeah.
Well, it's there's kind of like this whole fractal, thing, within one thing, there are many, so, I mean, I've written long pieces, which to me, when we play them, they feel like they fly by, so that must be something's working there. But the whole thing is so relative, like the whole perception of it. But I find, you got to just go where the muse takes you. I on the first album there, you guys might be familiar with Answers. I'm not sure if
the track.
Yeah, I think it's like the second song, possibly.
Yeah, second track.
I believe that was the first song I wrote that was under 3 minutes. I could be wrong. But I was like so happy about that because previously I'd been like these kind of like coming from the jam band world, really, like where every song has a sort of instrumental section, and which is like a lot of classic prog. You could take away all the instrumental bits and have a 3-minute song,
right?
But those are the cool things. That's why you listen to it for fucking 15 minutes. It's like, it's cool. But for that, I really wanted to like write a little nifty little thing, and honestly, that was more inspired by Zappa than anything. If you think that, that riff might make sense. And it's a weird odd time signature, which is another thing. If you ever care to analyze my work, you'll notice I love odd time signatures. Man.
Did you notice that, Michael?
Maybe you haven't from the first album. If you go into the second album, for sure, you will notice it right off the bat.
Okay.
Especially, I mean, you'll hear it in the first thing, that one there for sure.
When's the last time you listened to the first album, though?
Pardon me?
When's the last time you listened to your first album?
Oh God, it's got to be years, man. It's got to be really.
But
long
you can
time.
pretty much hear every track now.
Yeah, I know I can bring out all the details, but I'm sure that there is a level of sort of subjective, like judgment or something, or some kind of filter that I've been carrying with me all this time, which I bet you if I listened to it now would disappear, or most of it, like things do change over time. And a lot of stuff that I thought was kind of like mediocre or crap, or like, I'm sure a lot of, and it's weird, a lot of people that are really hard on themselves don't really get much of a spotlight, whereas a lot of people that don't give a fuck and write kind of just silly little easy things that are cool, they eat up all the, because that's how it is. Me, I'm more of a, like I said, I don't have the ego, I guess, to kind of go out there and knock everything down to be heard. So anyhow, what the fuck was my point? I am so rambling. Man. I really, like I should not have smoked.
I want to ask you about composition, because the thing about, not to make it about me, but I will anyway. I'm trying to compose music, and it's like I have this problem where I do get bored. I want change, different, whatever. But there's another thing where I lose objectivity. Like I'm just in front of my computer composing, and it's just like I become brain dead with respect to what I'm creating. How do you refresh your brain when you are composing? Do you switch between among songs, or do you take a break? Because I find I get saturated.
Else, but when you get to that point, I've learned to just stop.
Take a break.
Stop trying. Because the moment you start forcing the process, it's not good. So if you really like, what do I do next? Just hit the pause button. And I'm sure if you're anything like me, you have about 10,000 other things you could also be working on.
Laundry. That was a Michael joke anyway. So, but when it comes to inspiration, Dave, when it comes to inspiration, when you think back on the first 3 albums that you wrote, and even the 4th one, which I can't wait to hear, you have to admit that in some moments you're inspired, and for whatever reason it's flowing out of you. And then other moments, you can't believe that you have even any creativity whatsoever. Like you feel dead inside. So have you found a way to maximize the inspired moments, or how does that work for you?
Well, this might sound weird, and I'll be very honest. My problem isn't lacking ideas. It's being inundated and being unable to manage the ideas. I'll be brutally honest. Maybe, I don't know, I feel like I'm constantly with a little concept, and I have this almost reflex to, at the very least, hum the melody or beatbox something in my phone if I'm not near a keyboard or a guitar. The problem is it's gotten to be like, scratching an itch, and I have, pushing 2,000 of these things on my newest phone, you know what I mean? And I have ideas going back to like mini disc and cassette.
Wow.
I need at least 100 lifetimes to go through everything, man. But I mean, that's how it is with some types of creative types, I guess, that are borderline insane.
That's like Zappa's archives. You've seen Zappa's archives, right?
Yeah, you know, and Leonard Cohen had his boxes and shit, you know. I mean, these happen, you know, you just get ideas. But even with the Beatles, right? I think it was like over 200 songs before they picked Love Me Do or something like that.
Oh, wow.
Something, I might be paraphrasing there, but yeah, I think that's how it is. It's kind of like, you know, sperm, man, you know what I mean? Certainly not going to produce like a billion kids every time you ejaculate, you know what I mean? Like, but there's a reason why you might be that overly creative. So one of them is really good, you know, it does see the light of day. But the thing is, okay, so the ideas for me come easy. The problem is taking this and then fucking working it into something that, and then, you know, finishing the actual song, which is an accomplishment for anyone that's ever written a song that they feel super proud of. It's like, you know, yeah, it can come easy, man, you know, but if you really want to do something that's kind of unique, but not like just fucking weird, you know, like, you know, it can often take some work. And then you got to teach the band that, right? And it's like, I don't want to fucking play this drum beat, you know. It's like, dude, you got to play it. And then cool idea. It's like, yeah, man, you know.
That must be
so
hard.
That happens, you know, like 10 times per album, you know.
Wow.
And then you got to deal with it. Then you get the record, and then you got to, you know, the marketing and all that. So the whole thing is, it's extremely taxing, you know, on many levels. And if you haven't had the you know, the thing, you know, that is, you know, like winning the lottery, but it, you know, obviously it's not really the deciding factor. If you're a creative artist type person, you're gonna do this thing anyhow.
Yeah.
But
you're talking about commercial
that
success,
machine or industry or group or whatever behind you. It can be very easy just to kind of like let it go for a bit and just take a break. And that's basically where things are with that. But I am super proud of the first 3 albums. And like I was saying earlier, the 4th album is in the works. There's at least one song that's completely recorded and just needs to be mixed. And there's another idea that's not even tracked yet, but it's that the centerpiece. What I want to do is like Rush, you know, like put one side is like one song and the other side is like 2 or 3 songs, you know. So it was, you know, so I'm really into making it as prog for me. Like it's going to be a pure prog album in many ways. Like it's at least
the 4th one is going to be the most prog of your 4.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not sure if you have heard a song that's on, you know, Bandcamp called "I'm Freaking Out," the ballad of the missing girl. It's a 13-minute piece of music.
It's trending.
I would say no, but
oh, it's one of your pieces from your 4th album.
Yeah. It's been out there for a while, but I'm not sure if you ever came across it. But it's like that to me was a kind of a hallmark or pinnacle or something of my writing. The recording of it isn't awesome, but it's there, and it's been played on the radio and stuff. It's just it's not like I would get it remixed. But
you do the mixing yourself, Dave?
No.
For the first album?
No, I do a lot of the sort of the color and the sound design aspect.
Because I saw you on your computer in your apartment. I saw you on your computer in your apartment doing the whatever your software was called at the time. Remember?
Well, I could have been doing a lot of the panning. I take care of the panning too for when it comes to like especially the non-basic stuff. You know, like if there's like for a psychedelic record, we'll often want things to go from one side to the other kind of thing, you know, and you're not going to pay some guy to, make it do this for like, you know, and then pan it there. And then, you know, you're going to do it yourself, you know, like the guy you're paying is going to make it sound pro. But when it comes to all that sort of the colorful, weird little moves,
bells and
it's best to do them on yourself, you know, because, and I know how to do that. And I can pretty much do everything except I don't trust myself to mix drums in particular to get I've never been able to work the magic on what a real pro guy can do to a drum recording. And I'm still learning. Basically, it's a work in progress. For me to get to something that I feel good about, it's like after many versions of the, rough mix. And 6 months later, whereas a pro guy would do it in 2 days,
Michael has a question now.
No,
Yes.
I'm very happy. I'm glad it's not just me who can't mix everything.
Well,
It's hard.
a lot of young cats, and everyone has a home studio, of course. I mean, a home studio is basically a computer, a laptop, and a sound card, right?
Yeah.
Some people have a good preamp, most people don't. But the point is, everyone has a home studio, and everyone can more or less track decently enough to get a good recording, a good signal. It's not in the red, so it's okay. But most people, for some reason, think they can mix music on their home, and then more so, they think they can master. They can be like a mastering guy with their little laptop thing. Man, so come on, man. Anyhow, but
where does EQ fit into that?
Where do I fit in?
No, EQ.
Oh, EQing. Well, that's part of the overall mixing process. Compression and EQ are the two sort of magical things one must have in your domain to be good at this job. Like those are the two things. The levels, but you can have the sort of the same levels, but if you just change the frequencies of certain things, all of a sudden this pops out, and then you create all this clarity.
You get contrast.
It's not necessarily louder or less loud. It's just cleaned up.
It's not muddy, because a lot of the music that I like is muddy. It's because it's from the 70s.
Well, I mean, there's a quality to all that stuff too, though.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's a lot of new rock music wants to sound like the old stuff. They want to emulate the sound of tubes and old boards and things.
I want to ask you, what do you think about contemporary prog versus old school prog? Because I like old school, but Michael likes.
Give me an example of
he likes
prog.
He likes transatlantic. I think it's garbage. Transatlantic is contemporary
it's
prog.
wonderful.
It's a super group. Okay, it's got
would you call it like in the same overall bubble as Dream Theater?
I think so. I mean, that's what I think. But I think Dream Theater is a bit heavier.
Right.
But do you know? There's a good one. It's called Porcupine Tree.
Oh yeah. Well, that's Steven Wilson.
Yeah. I mean, I just barely tolerate that. There's some stuff I like. I like his early stuff on cassette, but it's like it's so. And there's another one. Like I interviewed a guy from Glass Hammer. It's overproduced for me.
Steven Wilson is brilliant, but he does seem to make things a little too clean, and too perfect, a little too sanitary for. It's weird how if you kind of analyze the history of prog music, like after it peaked, because people don't know this. Maybe you know this. 1973, the biggest musical act in the world was ELP. The biggest selling live concert was fucking Emerson, Lake and Palmer, right? And it doesn't get any geekier and proggier than those guys, right? So that was almost like the pinnacle, and of course, down the road and the punk thing in the late 70s. But when prog sort of died, what remained to me is like this version of prog, which almost always has like some synth pad going on in the background, very clean guitar sounds. It's very like, well, it also is very European, but
it's gay. Let's just be honest. It's gay.
Well, no, I mean, it can be cool with musical ideas.
Like Spock's beard. Spock's beard.
What's that?
Spock's beard. Do you know the band?
Yeah. Well, that's a lot older though.
Is it?
I think so.
To me, that's contemporary. Like that's like.
Oh, maybe I'm thinking, or maybe I'm not remembering exactly who they are. Maybe I have.
Anyway, there's a lot of crap that's overproduced, and it sounds like elevator music. That to me, there's no
that's
heart.
Basically what I'm saying too. Yeah, and it wasn't always like that though. So what I'm saying, it's like there was like the big bands of the early 70s, the Yes and Genesis and ELP and
I love them.
Crimson, and then they kind of went off, out of flavor or whatever, out of fashion, and the bands that did carry on in the sort of prog underground started sounding like this really watered down version of prog, like with this very, like, the keyboard guys were not like, Gentle Giant or
that's one of my favorites.
Focus there, there's none of that. It was all synth pads, and it just didn't
easy listening.
Well, I mean, it didn't challenge you the same way, and just sonically, I think the sound of music, of live music, was changing anyhow, right? Like
Julie Andrews,
like early '70s to late '70s, things did clean up, and then the '80s got super, washed out, like reverby and gated drums and stuff like that. The sounds changed, and I guess prog went with it. But I've always loved the early sounds. I've always been like more of a organ B3, real piano, kind of thing.
Michael's gonna say something.
I was.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that sounds like the King and I. I agree, but I wanted to take this back to something earlier. In my composition life, I have 2 other siblings who write music. One semi-professional and one just for fun. But the one who's semi-professional, he plays all the tracks, and he sat me down one day and he's like, when you write music, the drummer is a person. He's not just there to do boots and cats every single measure like you write. Because when I write, I literally put that into every single measure, and then later I change it. And he flips out on me one day going, the drummer's a person. The bassist is a person. He can't play one note every single measure. He has to do something. So does that mentality that trying to imagine every line played by someone, how does that influence the way you might write a song?
Well, I've been accused by more than one musician of being a little bit of a control freak, and I don't ever mean to be, but sometimes when I get an idea for a melody, it comes with a chord progression, a bass line, and a drum beat all in the same package as the idea. And it seems to be like, because I'm a huge fan of counterpoint and syncopation, and that's one of the coolest sort of trademarks of prog music, kind of that stuff, and sometimes the ideas are just like that, so the drum beat has to kind of do this thing, and the bass line has to do that thing, and it's part of the thing. And I really don't like the idea of taking away creativity from other musicians. It's not really a cool thing. But also the nature of bands these days is like, we're not sort of on the road all the time. We're jamming, 5 days a week and having this chemistry when we come up with ideas. Oftentimes bands have, they still have day jobs, and sometimes kids, time at a premium. So you got to do it on the weekend. You got to maybe one day out of the week, maybe once every 2 weeks, you know. So you're not going to play around and try things out. You got to hey man, here's the thing, especially if you have a recording date coming up. I mean, it's nice to play around and experiment, but in my recent experience, there's never been a huge, it's never led to the actual song getting that much better. I mean, sometimes I come up with an idea and it's hey, try this. Oh yeah, okay, cool, man. And that's cool. And I'm totally open-minded, because sometimes, and I myself, I've had a bass line, the same chord, same rhythm, and then you're totally a fan of this bass line, and then a week later it's fuck, that bass line sucks, and you try something else. It's wow, this is a much better idea. Someone else could have come up with that idea, and so I believe that. I could be wrong sometimes. I mean, it's very most likely, in fact, and it's not even about right or wrong. It's just what works at the moment, Well,
when you're young, you're in your teens, late teens, early 20s, and you're living the rock and roll lifestyle with your buddies, and you're getting laid and all that. It's exciting. And then when you're a bit older and married and whatever, you have a job, life sucks, and then music is this escapism. This is from my own perspective. It's just like my life sucks, but music is kind of like an escape. I'm happily married and all that, but it's like, music to me is like an escape. So I'm in this band now with this guy Michael and Phil and whatever. But the funny thing is, it's a part-time endeavor, and we're trying to collaborate, but we've never collaborated really. I mean, not too much. And I just kind of like sit in front of my computer, make my song, and Michael's made his song, and our friend Phil, he's contributed some guitar parts and whatever. And eventually we're going to try to make it into a cohesive album. But the point of my question here, the big lead up is age, like that time of life. Like now you're a certain age. I don't know if you're in your 40s or what you are, but I'm 55. So it's like, it's a different dynamic with rock and roll, because rock and roll is supposed to be sort of edgy and youthful, right?
Well, okay, definitions and things and labels. Yeah, I mean, rock and roll a la Eddie Cochran or something, or, Gene Vincent, or, yeah, okay, fine. But music, for me, I mean, the thing that I've come to realize as I've gotten older is, first of all, my tastes have broadened massively. And the judgments, I used to have this sort of judgment thing on a lot of stuff that when I was younger, it was like, oh, that's so cheesy, man. Girl from Ipanema. Well, man, now I'm like playing that shit for money, so, I'm a musician outside of the band. I support myself playing music,
Cool.
and which involves many different styles. And I've come to appreciate music on just a purely musical level. And there's like a physics, like when a series of notes comes together and produces this thing, which is then translated through the air and like waves and frequencies, and it just connects with the psyche and your chakras in a certain way. Your body, there's this thing that happens which you can't, it really is very hard to, quantify or qualify.
It's magic.
It's like, it's just this thing that happens with music. But there will be a science, like one day they will, I'm sure, But point is, you do it for love, and if you get paid.
So you're not really in the rock thing. You're in the music thing, which is broader and more mature. Just music generally.
Well, for a while I gave it all to A Devil's Den, for many years, and we even did a tour of the UK, and
wow.
And it was cool, But I'd had previous to that, I was doing many. Like I think I was like playing as a hired gun or session guy, or sub or whatever, like playing in other bands and or sometimes covering stuff, oftentimes on piano, keyboard. But when I got to a certain point where I said, I was fed up and started, tried to get this band going, and it never quite hit this point where it would be able to pay the bills, and in many ways, that's kind of a good thing, because as soon as you start relying on a art form to generate revenue, it usually kind of corrupts what you do with that.
I think so, yeah.
So I mean, if anything's going to happen with this band, and it's not game over, as long as I'm alive, you never know. And the music, and we still have a weird little fan base around the world.
Okay.
It's been online for years now, so,
That's cool.
And we still got played on certain, web radios and things like that, and thrown on some compilations. So there's some activity without us actually playing live.
That's cool.
But, there was that fourth album, but yeah.
What's your top, what would you say is your most popular track from any of the three so far?
Probably Eternal Now.
Okay.
I made a cool little found footage video for that on YouTube. And
I was in one of your videos. Anna and I were in one of your videos. Remember?
Yeah, for
St. Dominic. Yeah.
Skylight. Yeah, that tune, that's the first song off the second album, which is in 7. The whole song is in 7, by the way, which is a lot of fun.
That's cool.
7/8. But yeah, that was a fun video because we basically got all our friends and freaky family out the courtyard there. I don't know if you're familiar with that. Are you in Montreal, man?
Who, Michael?
Yeah.
California.
California. Okay, sorry, man. I have no idea. I missed the whole other part where. Yeah, okay.
The hat. Let's just look at the hat. Cool. He's from California. Look, that's obvious.
Yo.
I'm from France.
Okay, I hope you stay with all forms of weirdness
with the Californian accent.
Anyhow,
what do you think of heavy metal? The metal side of prog, because it seems to be where all the talent went.
Well, that's where all the cool, weird, time signature
experimental stuff
things, like old school prog doesn't really seem to exist in like that sonic way, I guess. Not to my knowledge, but math rock and prog metal and those kinds of weird, interesting, kind of very intellectual things.
Yeah.
Sometimes a little aggressive, I guess. Sometimes a little intense. But it's cool. I like
a lot of it's operatic. A lot of it has many influences: jazz, folk, classical. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think that's where prog is today. I think that's where the genius of prog is. It's in metal. Unfortunately, I don't like metal, but a lot of the experimental weird stuff I do like.
I mean, some bands Opeth,
yeah,
for example, they've changed their sound so much, and if you listen to like a newer thing, you would never have any idea how they used to sound.
What's his name? Devin Townsend or something like that. Do you know?
Yeah. I find him, I guess, also in the psych world a bit more.
I haven't heard his music yet. Someone at work is telling me about him. He's supposed to be pretty wild.
No, we're talking the drummer of was he the drummer of Caius? Who we're talking about?
Devin Townsend. I'll tell you about him right now.
Right. I'm all.
Meanwhile, Michael has a question for you.
So horrible with.
I do. Yeah. I have a lot of questions. I blame everything on guitars. They ruined all music.
There you go.
When I've tried to mix music, I have this duality of either I'm using keyboards or like percussive instruments like guitars, and if they're playing at the same time, one is always drowning out the other. It's like
what kind of keyboard are you talking about, though? I mean,
No, this is all like cheap MIDI stuff on FL Studios.
Okay.
This is
I
just
don't know,
like.
Man. So I find if you have like a just holding down a chord on a B3, no matter what else is going on, it's going to sound great. It's just my humble opinion.
Devin Townsend was from a metal act called Strapping Young Lad.
Okay.
He's called the Mad Scientist of Metal. He produces a wide variety of music. I sent the link in the sidebar, but I don't think you can see the sidebar. But anyway, you can check him out. He's got a very bald head.
Oh, that's very nice.
I don't know if that's relevant.
The conditions are changing.
The other thing was with music, there was metal. What was the other question that I had about prog generally? Well, there's there's 22 subgenres of prog. There's folk prog.
22?
Yeah, 22 subgenres. My go-to reference is progarchives.com, and you guys are on there actually.
Sure, absolutely,
That's pretty cool.
Are they the ones that define these or set that?
It's their very arbitrary definition of what's prog and what's not, and they have their arbitrary 22 categories. But I want some kind of dogmatic structure. I don't care if it's true or not. I just want it.
How would you define prog?
Don't laugh, Mike. Huh? How would I define what?
Prog.
Well, it's hard to define, right? Because a lot
rock.
I mean, to me, the reason that I like prog is because it surprises me. If it doesn't surprise me, what's the point? You know what I mean?
Right.
I want to be delighted with something new and something special, and I think Gentle Giant's a prime example. I only discovered them last year, and it was blew my mind.
Oh yeah, they're one of the most
amazing, very creative, and I just discovered Frank Zappa. I've known about him all my life, but I've just discovered his discography, and he's blowing my mind too. So it's the creativity, and I like silliness. There's silliness, not so much in A Devil's Den, but in a lot of prog there's silliness. Maybe you have some silliness, but it's cloaked.
Yeah, I mean, there might be a small amount of silliness in the third record.
Okay.
Because the third album we wanted to make it more, or I did more sort of not dumbed down, but like
more accessible.
Like kind of like draw from a sort of era of psych rock, which is more about just bobbing your head and grooving out, but with some cool things going on. And so one of the songs actually is called Nearly Normal, and it's a little silly in the lyrics. It's about, it's about a weirdo, basically. So if you analyze, I would say that's a little silly, but it's not nearly as like full on silly as like Gentle Giant doing the kind of, they can be like genius silly though. You know what I mean? Like, yeah.
Yeah, well, there's that genius thing like Syd Barrett, he's a bit crazy, and Captain Beefheart. Like, these are the guys I like,
Oh, sure.
And
a lot of Syd Barrett in my music.
Well, would you say
I recognize that. Yeah.
That there's a great difference between early and later prog, that early prog comes out of a more interesting classical tradition and jazz, whereas later prog comes out of early prog. And they don't have the same connection, because like what we were listening to last week, was it a Focus? And it had some it had some like 15th century Northern European music in it, like
sure,
with the bagpipes. It's like, okay, what's this? This is zero cultural relevance to me in America. Zero.
Well, for sure.
I see it in a movie.
Well, there is I mean, probably one of those 22 subgroups of prog probably involve folk elements, or like definitely there's a lot of Celtic elements.
Yeah.
Certain kind of things you'll hear. There's, to me, there's no real rules. I think the idea is primarily music that does stimulate, that is like a little bit more challenging, interesting. It's really hard to put
challenging. I want to be challenged. I want to be challenged. And like one of my favorite bands is Vandergraaf Generator.
For sure. Well, those guys are not. Yeah, in the spectrum of prog, I find them even a bit more edgy.
Inaccessible.
Yeah,
and
cool.
I discovered them in my teenage years, and I thought, what the hell is this? And then I just kept listening, because when you're young and you only have 3 albums, you're just going to tend to listen to them, right?
Sure.
But today, I wanted to ask you about the digital scene, because, everyone's downloading everything for free. So I don't want to talk about money and marketing, but I want to talk about creativity. And the listener, is the listener retarded today because he just has a bunch of sound bites and he's just scrolling through short videos? Or will people sit down and listen to a whole album today?
There is a dichotomy. I don't know. What would you say?
I'm just worried that people don't have patience anymore. I'm worried.
There's it's kind of like the political situation, perhaps. It's really, there's not a lot of middle ground. Either people are listening to like the pure pop candy, or they're like crazy ass like 8-string guitar fucking weirdness, drop F tuning. I don't know if that exists. I'm not really a guitarist.
Have you used 13th chords a lot?
In ADD? No. In a lot of the other sort of jazzier things, I do, absolutely.
Because Michael was making fun of me. He's like, because I told him I'm going to make I hate symphonic prog, but I'm going to make a symphonic prog song. And he's like, well, I can't wait to see Dave putting together these 13th chords and stuff like that. And so I had to look it up what it actually is, because I don't have the music theory.
So by symphonic, you mean like big orchestral, like strings?
Yeah, that's my interpretation of symphonic prog. But,
well, I mean, like, the first, well, not the first, I guess it was the second Moody Blues album, Days of Future Past, I guess. Probably one of the first.
That's pretty cool. I like that. I do like that.
But there is a thing that happens with all bands that reach a certain level of success. They make a symphonic version of their greatest hits.
Oh, really?
Doesn't always work. Now, every band tends to do that, right? I think Metallica did that. I mean, Deep Purple did that. I don't know. Doesn't always work. Sometimes it's great,
Oh, yeah. Did you like Camel?
Yes. Yeah.
Because they had that Snow Goose album.
Camel albums on vinyl. Yeah.
They did Snow Goose, which is some sort of soundtrack or something.
Yeah, I have that.
It's not my top favorite, but I'm sympathetic to them.
They're interesting. They're I mean, some of these earlier bands, I don't go back to frequently, but when it sort of hits me, it's like, but it's hard for, I mean, I don't know how it is for you guys, or, you know, when the older you get, do you keep, it's hard to go back to the same things, you know, like when I was much younger, you know, I listened to the Beatles almost daily, you know, and it's like, you know, it's been a while. I always loved the Beatles, but it's like I'm not listening to them, you know, maybe once every 10 years now, you know, like.
Well, Michael, you told me you listen to the same music all the time, right? Is that what you told me?
Yeah, I listen to K-pop. I literally just listen to Korean pop nonstop. In fact, but one thing that's interesting about it is it's so formulaic.
Yeah.
You can kind of take structures out of it and then just remove lines and put your own lines in. Okay. So it's very simple to get into. But that was what I wanted to say is a big difference probably between, like, say, ELP covering, what was that piece they covered? There was the Camp Down.
The Hoedown?
The Hoedown.
Yeah.
They're literally covering that era of classical music, which is already prog.
Yeah, yeah.
It's already prog. Like Gustav Holst.
What's his name? Yeah. Copeland. Yeah.
Yeah, Copeland. Gustav Holst's Jupiter is a prog piece when it starts off.
For sure. Well,
we don't think about it, but it is.
Yeah. Look,
just put a drummer there.
What happened was in popular music, it went from very sophisticated people, even the most blatant pop song had a ton of very educated musicians behind them until sort of the 50s when rock and roll came out. But even then, you know, if you see like all the studio guys, all jazz cats, oftentimes, you know, in any live thing, there's like the rock and roll star and this, you know, bunch of like real pros behind, you know. But then, you know, the 60s and the Beatles and being your own writer and musician and all that, being a pop star kind of happened. And then the songwriting part really took a nosedive, and it has kind of never reclaimed its glory. The last big era of like songwriter-based music was probably like the mid 70s, you know, like in the James Taylor and Carole King and, you know, like really good song, you know what I mean, where that kind of ruled the roost. So yeah, man, I mean, K-pop it is, man, sure, why not? You know, I mean, to me, I've never really been captivated by K-pop listening to it.
No, it's mindless, but it's like white noise and rhythm. That's all it is.
Yes, I mean, it's saying it's interesting to look at, you know, with the volume down, because K-pop, but it's like
it's so coordinated and mechanical and commercialized. It's like Walmart music. It's fantastic.
It's a type of you know, like a type of candy, you know, that is not from here, you know, it's another.
It is exotic, I guess.
Oh, it's just pure sugar.
And he likes the girls.
Yeah, but that's a secondary.
Well, that part always is part of any kind of popular music.
That's
any
why,
culture in any language.
That's why Refried Haggis hired me, the sexy one. I'm the sexy one.
To scare everyone away. We will not have any groupies allowed.
Oh well,
no groupies allowed. Are we going overtime here, or you're thinking about wrapping it up, Dave? Because you have
You're talking to me?
It's your birthday, right?
It is actually my birthday today. It's my birthday. Yeah.
Happy birthday.
Yeah, happy birthday.
Yeah, I'm all good, but
okay, we'll keep chatting until you're ready to. The last guest I had.
My call ends in 2 minutes. Is that?
Oh yeah. I forgot. There's a limit. There's a hard limit on this. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let's do final thoughts and tell us about when can we expect the fourth album?
I really don't want to put anything on it because at this rate you never know, man. But I really
within the next 5 years,
a year-ish, you know.
Okay.
I have other projects going, different styles. But anyone that's interested in ADD, if you're curious by the first album, please continue. You know, on Bandcamp, everything there. Because I do believe the songs are cool, man. You know, it's the production is pretty good. It's just the marketing sucks ass, man.
Yeah, very cool.
Anyway, great meeting you, and great. Thanks. Kudos on your podcast, man. You know, give it a few months, we'll be right up there with.
It's just a few $1 million that we've made so far. It's nothing. So, but it's great to reconnect with you, man. I mean, like, we haven't seen each other, like I said, since before COVID. It's just crazy. And it would be fun to grab a tea or hang out or something. And you're in NDG. I'm in the Plateau still.
I might be on the mountain Sunday.
Oh, cool. Cool. Very cool. So thank you so much, and thanks, Michael, for hopping on the call and your questions and all that. And thanks to Progopolis in the live chat. He's been entertaining.
Yay.
And we'll talk very soon. Dave, I hope you come back in the future, like when your album comes out or even before.
Absolutely. Thanks, man.
God bless. Thanks. See you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.